Welcome to Warhammer 40k lore in the Bible, where I pull from Warhammer 40k lore to help explain biblical lore. And today we're going to be going over my favorite Space Marines chapter, the Salamanders. But before we get into that, take the wikis with a grain of salt. I also do a regular biblical video on Mondays, and the rest is Warhammer 40k content. And I'm working on the next episode of Space Marine Dude. It's a comedy thing that I do. And it'll be out either next week or I should say, next week. Hopefully next week. Or the week after that. But anyways, let's go ahead and get started. The Salamanders are one of the Loyalist first founding chapters of the Space Marines. They originally served as the Imperium's 18th Space Marine Legion during the Great Crusade in the Horus Heresy. For some time before the unification with their primarch, they were known as Dragon Warriors. Their homeworld is the volcanic death world of Nocturne. The Salamanders, as a chapter, are unusually concerned with civilian casualties compared to other Space Marines, and believe that one of their most important duties is to protect the lives of the Emperor of mankind's innocent subjects whenever and wherever possible. Yes, sir. This is an attitude that developed as a consequence of the Salamanders' own unusually close connections to the Nocturne people, as they are one of the only chapters of Astartes who continue to interact with their families and the people of their homeworld after their transformation into Space Marines. For instance, it is not uncommon for a Salamander to serve as a clan leader among the Nocturnians and live with them when chapter business does not require him to remain at the chapter's fortress monastery on Nocturne's moon of Prometheus. The Salamanders and their people as a whole are also defined by their adherence to a variation of the imperial cult called the Promethean cult. The story of the Salamanders and the legend of how their primarch Vulkan was reunited with the Emperor is one of the few stories from the time of the Great Crusade told in a coherent form across many different worlds of the Imperium. How much of the so-called Promethean opus is factually accurate is unknown, and in many ways unimportant. The fact that the Salamanders have stood for 10,000 standard years as a paragons of strength, honor, and resolution is the true legacy of their primarch, and one of that endures into the dark epoch of the 41st millennium. The Salamanders hail from the world racked by constant volcanic instability, but possessing the very rarest kinds of mineral resources. The violence of the cyclic volcanic activity creates and churns up minerals highly prized by the Adeptus Mechanicus. Yet the planet has been occupied by mankind since long before the age of the Imperium. When the infant Vulkan appeared on Nocturne, he was discovered by the smith of one of 7 main settlements, a master craftsman who soon taught the infant primarch all he knew. When a few short Terran years, Vulkan had developed into a hulk of a man, his mind as powerful as his body. Soon, Vulkan was teaching the master smiths of Nocturne metalworking techniques lost to them since the darkest days of the Age of Strife. When Vulkan defeated one of the regular and highly costly Drukhari raids upon Nocturne, he was unanimously acknowledged as their leader. When the Emperor came to Nocturne to be reunited with his lost son, he chose not to do so with great ceremony, as he had in several other cases, and he did not announce his identity, hiding behind an obscuring psychic glamour. Instead, he came as a stranger during the festival to celebrate Vulcan's great victory. By tradition, such celebrations included numerous contests and trials of strength, and so the stranger challenged Vulcan, declaring the winner of their contest would kneel before the other and declare his eternal fealty. The resulting challenge saw that the stranger and the primarch performed such deeds that no mortal could replicate, culminating in a hunt to slay the largest of the great fire-loving native reptiles known as salamanders, and return to the settlement with its body. During this final challenge, Vulcan slew a gargantuan beast, but upon his return journey to the ground opened up beneath him, the ground opened up beneath him, and a torrent of lava surged up to engulf him. With one hand clinging to a rock and the other gripping the tail of his huge prize, Vulcan hung perilously over the surging lava, his mighty strength seeping away after the many solar days of trials. Only by abandoning his trophy could Vulcan save himself, yet he refused to do so, even in the face of death. Then the stranger appeared before him, but his path was blocked by yet another lava channel. Vulcan saw that the stranger dragged behind him a prize even greater than his own, the body of the largest salamander ever seen, which he cast into the lava to form a bridge. A moment later, the stranger took Vulcan's hand and lifted the primarch and his prize straight up, saving him from death. Upon their return to the settlement, the elders declared Vulcan the winner of the contest, for the stranger had returned from the hunt empty-handed. But it was not the stranger who declared his eternal fealty, but the primarch who did so, going down on one knee and declaring that a man who valued another's life over his own victory was a man worth saving or serving. In that moment, the stranger cast off his psychic disguise, and all could see him for what he truly was, the master of mankind, come to Nocturne to find his son and to reunite its people with the rest of humanity. Vulcan assumed the mantle of the primarch of the 18th Legion, thereafter called the Salamanders. Recruiting from the hardy men of Nocturne, the Legion soon became known for their strength, courage, and honor of its battle brothers, as well as the skills with which they fashioned their weapons of war. But the age of imperial glory was not to last long, for along with the Iron Hands and the Raven Guard, the Salamanders were deceived by the War Master Horus into taking their place amongst the doomed first wave of loyalist Space Marine legions at the drop site massacre of Istvan V, where they were decimated first by the traitors' defenses, and then by the treachery of the legions forming the second wave. The Salamanders are known to have suffered tragic losses at Istvan V as one of the so-called Shattered Legions, though sufficient numbers escaped to save the Legion from extinction. Records of this age are incomplete at best, and little of the Salamanders' actions or the deeds of their primarch are preserved. The events immediately following the Galactic Civil War are even more obscured and perhaps known only to the taciturn masters of the Salamanders' Librarius. The 18th Legion appears to have sired no immediate successors, and it is likely that their numbers were so depleted by the events of Istvan V, or the Drop Site Massacre, that it was not possible to divide into chapters. Several chapters created much later in a subsequent foundings may share the genetic inheritance of the salamanders, but no evidence exists of any second founding successor chapters have been sired. The extent to which the dictates of the Codex Astartes were adhered to in the aftermath of the breakup of the old legions varied much, and the Salamanders appear to have obeyed it in some respects, while ignoring it in others. The fielding of only 7 over strength companies by the chapter is one example of this, though in other respects of the chapter is largely compliant with the Robu Goleman's tone. The ultimate fate of the Salamander's primarch is a matter of much conjecture, for he disappeared many years after the Horus heresy. Some sources state that Vulkan led his chapter for 3 entire standard millennia before he departed on some mission he never declared to the Imperium at large. Though scant evidence of any of his deeds throughout the age remain. The tale is made all the more mysterious by the fact that Vulkan appeared to have left behind him a text called the Tome of Fire, in which is logged the nature and location of 9 artifacts the primarchs willed to his chapter. According to chapter belief, only when all 9 of these artifacts of Vulkan are recovered, as 5 now have been, will Vulkan judge the Salamanders sufficiently tempered to have passed the ultimate contest. Then, so the legend states, he shall return to lead the Salamanders in the final war against the enemies of humanity. Interesting. So we're going to read a little bit of Born in Fire here. Or all of it, actually. When the Primarch Vulkan was restored to the Imperium, it was to be on the world of Nocturne. This world of his growth and maturity would, as with his brethren Primarchs, shape much about him, and, by extension, his legion in later years. Nocturne is a death world, a turbulent volcanic orb riven with fire, radiation, and subject to destructive tidal forces caused by its moon, Prometheus. Nocturne is vastly rich in mineral wealth, particularly in gemstones and precious metals, but sparse in stability of climate or the abundance of organic flora, which makes human life readily possible. Such as life works, man. Never get the perfect area. Okay, further to the perils of Nocturne, numerous forms of highly evolved and adapted predator species and megafauna harden themselves by the environment of this foreboding world and the struggle to survive there. That human life was able to survive on Nocturne is a testament both to the persistence and sheer will to live that is the true strength of mankind. Yeah, ain't that the truth? The people of Nocturne had become, through design or natural evolution, a phenomenally hardy breed, markedly resistant both to extreme of climate, gravity, and ambient radiation, far above the baseline human norm, yet were also possessed by a considerable genetic stability. Although the technological level had regressed to pre-industrial during the travails of old night, the Nocturnians had maintained a high degree of culture, sophistication, and social cohesion, and the values of stoic resistance, perseverance in the face of adversity, and, above all, courage had become the hallmarks of its tribal people. Deadly Nocturne was to its people the anvil, the adversity by which men and women were forged, and never more so than during the deadly time of trials, when the planet's moon of Prometheus was at its closest orbit. I'll learn how to read one of these days. During this time, the land was riven with tempest, earthquake, and volcanic eruption, and the great beasts were stirred from their slumber in the earth of Nocturne to slake their hunger. All right, now we're going to move to the biblical side of things. All right, so we're going to talk about dragons and a fiery mountain. But anyways, Revelation 12:3. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, the great red dragon, having 7 heads, 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his head. Now, if you want to know what I'm talking about here, I just did a video on Monday talking about these guys, these 7 chief ones. But anyways, it's interesting. It's probably the best video I've ever done on this channel. And I'll probably look at doing, you guys like this longer form content. So anyways, so we got pretty much a dragon. It says it right here, a red dragon. Now, Revelation 12:9. And that great dragon was cast out, that old serpent, called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Yeah. Now we're told that Satan is a cherubim, right? But nowhere do we see it say that, the Bible, and also he's a serpent, right? And I'll show you right here. Isaiah 6:2. Above it stood the seraphims. Each one had 6 wings. With twain he covered his face, and with twain he covered his feet, and with twain he did fly. So this is what seraphim means, or seraph, right? A serpent, or right here, Strong's, fiery serpent, from seraph, from burning, figuratively poisonous serpent, specifically a seraph or symbolic creature, from their copper color, fiery serpent, seraph. So, does Satan sound like a cherubim or a seraphim? Right? It calls him a dragon, which would be a fiery serpent. Okay. And this is probably what he would look like right here. Right? It calls him a dragon. And then these 7 others right here may very well be as well. So, but if you want to check that out, that was Monday's video. Okay. Isaiah 34:13. Now we're going to get into physical, like the animal type of dragons, I guess you could say. Isaiah 34:13. And thorns shall come up in her palaces, nettles and brambles in the fortresses thereof. And it shall be a habitation of dragons and a court for owls. That gets into the screech owl, but that'll be in a week or two when I cover that stuff, which is very interesting. Okay. Isaiah 30:30. And the Lord shall cause his glorious voice to be heard, and shall slew the lightning down of his arm, with the indignation of his anger, and with the flame of devouring fire, with scattering and tempest and hailstones. I just thought that was cool. And the salamanders are all about fire, so I thought that would be good to bring up. Okay. Now we're going to get into another dragon, right? This is the second hand man, right? This is second in charge in the kingdom of darkness. So Isaiah 14:29, this is talking about the Assyrian, or his name is, the Bible calls him the Assyrian or the destroyer. So rejoice not thou, O Palestina, because the rod of him that smote you, or smote thee, is broken. For out of the serpent's root shall come forth a cockatrice, and his fruit shall be a fiery flying serpent. So if you want to check that out, that's Isaiah 14:29. And you can check out the whole chapter and you'll see that it's talking about this character called the Assyrian. It calls him a fiery flying serpent. All right. Wait, what is this one? Oh, yes. Okay. Isaiah 43:20. And the beast of the field shall honor me, the dragons and the owls. So these guys, right? Or no, not these guys. These ones right here, right? No. I'm sorry, guys. My goodness. See at 34, in the habitation of dragons and a court for owls. Oh, you have here kind of the same thing. Because I give the waters of the wilderness, rivers in the desert, to give drink to my people and my chosen. Okay. Now we're going to get into fire mountains. So this is the first book of Enoch, chapter 18. Okay. Okay. And I saw a flame of fire. And beyond these mountains is a region, end of great earth. There the heavens, let me see. Sun, stars. Okay, here we go. And there were 7 mountains of significant stones, 3 towards the east, 3 towards the south. And as those towards the east was colored stone, and one of pearl, one adjacent, and towards the south red stone. And the middle one reached to the heaven like the throne of God of alabaster, and the summit of the throne was sapphire. And I saw a flaming fire. So there's a fire mountain. And beyond these, uh, when it talks about the king of Tyre and all that, where he says, "You walked amongst the stones of fire." That's what he's talking about. Talking about these 7 mountains here. There's 7 fiery mountains. So, interesting. Okay. Now we're going to talk about Mount Deathfire. So all the Salamander fans know where I'm going with all this. So Mount Deathfire is a massive volcano in the Pyre Desert that is home to the great salamander reptiles called fire drakes that were part of the legendary contest between Vulcan and the Emperor over 10,000 standard years ago. Mount Deathfire is still the location for the last trial faced by the young aspirants who wish to join the Salamanders Chapter. Within Mount Deathfire is a sacred cavern where the rites of immolation are carried out. This chamber is known as the Pyrum, as massive crematoria where the bodies of slain Astartes are returned to the sacred fire of the mighty volcano. According to the Promethean cult lore, the essence of the departed will be passed on into a suit of power armor when his ashen remains are offered up on the pyre slab and he is returned to the mountain. This sacred chamber is held in a deep basin of volcanic rock, girded by layers of reinforced heat-retardant ceramite, so that the lava flowing into it pulled briefly before the flowing onwards from one of the many natural outlets in the rock. There were no lanterns in the cavern, for none were needed. The lava cast a warm and eldritch glow. Though ostensibly carved from rough rock and intended to look like a natural cavern, the Pyrum was actually a sacred place built by the master of the forge, Tekel millennia old. Its artifice and functionality are still lauded in the current decaying age of the Imperium. Tekel had fashioned the vault under the careful auspice of the chapter's primarch Vulcan, and had been amongst the first of his students upon his apotheosis to master of the 18th Legion. These same skills Tekel would impart to future generations of salamanders, together with the arcane secrets learned from the tech priests of Mars. The master of the forge is long dead now, and others walk in his mighty stead, but his legacy of achievements remains. The cavern of the Pyrum is but one of them. Within this mightiest of Nocturne's volcanoes lies also the labyrinth of tunnels and catacombs, so vast that 2 individuals could spend solar months abroad in its depths and never meet one another, and never even witness a sign of each other's passing. Much of its subterranean darkness is uncharted. Only Vulcan had ever known its every shrouded corner, its every tunnel and chamber, Beasts slumber in the lowest depths, old creatures jealous of man and his dominance of the surface. The unique acoustics of the rock, the veins of phonolite, and other orally conductive minerals within its composition allow the plaintive wailing of such creature to be heard far from their dwelling places by human nocturnians. Few natives ever brave the mountain depths for that season. It is the province of the salamanders alone, and so these passages often lie deserted. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. We're going to end it here. But thank you guys for watching, and you guys have a wonderful